And we'll do it live. We'll do it live. Okay, so I'm back on Facebook and I'm noticing a pattern here with many of my Catholic friends. I just was able to get back on Facebook today by some works of magic. I don't even know how it happened, but anyway, so I'm back on Facebook and a lot of the things that I kind of suspected are happening. And it's starting to make me think more and more about this conflict between the West and the East. I did an earlier video called about Western civilization, but now I'm really understanding what they're talking about. I'm like really starting to understand what the political sphere in America means when they say Western civilization. They mean the West and the East schism and the split between the West and the East in Christianity. And the West, that's why when you say the West, but it also includes, Australia. Well, the Australia is part of quote unquote the West. With relation to the Western Schism, the Western Eastern Schism that occurred in 1054 A.D. between the Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Western Christianity, and that's the split is the West and the East. And this split, understand, is so ingrained in our race that like we're literally, my whole life it's this, there's been this prediction of nuclear war between America and Russia and America and Russia. And then after and people thought, well, that's just the Soviet Union. And then the Soviet Union collapsed, and then it just kept going. There's just this constant friction, tension, what do you call it? There's like these two poles that are constantly fighting with each other between the West and the East. And for most of us, the average American, unless you're really following your political leaders to some kind of a doom cult, most of us are just looking at this going, what? Why are we doing this? This is silly. But it all boils down to this split in Christianity between Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Western Christianity based in Rome. And I know that my title is very very inflammatory, and I made it inflammatory on purpose to accentuate Donald Trump's role in this. Do I think Donald Trump is a willing and knowing agent of the Vatican? No, he doesn't know that he is. He doesn't know that he is. He thinks that he is the president of the US and that that's its own thing. That's what he thinks. And so he thinks he's going to go in there and be the president. And what I think at this point, I'm really starting to believe this, is that the US, and I've said this many times, obviously it was founded as the District of Columbia by Bishop Carroll and the Pope, and through Freemasonry, all that. I'm not going to relay that whole story for you again. But what's important about this story is this conflict, this intergenerational conflict between Russia and Europe, and Russia and Europe, and Rome, and what was it? Constantinople? Is that where all this started? It's like a really old intergenerational war that just won't end. And the problem is now we have nuclear weapons. And so it's like it's just escalated and escalated as far as the weaponry has just escalated. And so I don't think most people understand this. Okay, so I'm sure they don't. So let's just take a look at what I'm seeing with some of my friends on Facebook. This is the one that just got me recently, which pretty interesting. It's a meme. And on one side is Pope John Paul, and on the other side is Karl Marx. And here's a traditional Catholic guy. And this is what a lot of the traditional Catholics think. And I believe this is why they don't understand their own church. No offense if you're Catholic, but I'm just trying to work through this as a human being and what we're all going through here. It says what the Catholic Church inspired, and then it's got Pope John Paul with the cross, and he's got the halo. And then on the other side, it says what the enemies of the church have inspired. And then it's got Karl Marx with his, hand over his heart under his jacket in his pose. But here's the thing. So I commented, I don't want to get in a big argument with this guy because he's a friend of mine, but I did comment that the 1848 Marxists tried to overthrow the Calvinist king of Prussia, an enemy of Rome. And that explains everything. That explains Karl Marx and the whole thing. Is that Karl Marx was not an enemy of Rome. Karl Marx didn't try to overthrow the Catholic Church. Robespierre did. I should probably do a separate video on Robespierre. But Robespierre in France did, and they got rid of him. They got rid of Robespierre. There's no shrine to Robespierre, I don't believe, and I don't think there is in France. And so, but Karl Marx wasn't an enemy of Rome. People, Catholics think that he is because the Marxist movement appears to be anti-Christian. But it's not attacking Rome. It's not attacking Roman interests. It's attacking the enemies of Rome. It's attacking the enemies of Rome. The Antifa are attacking the enemies of Rome and always have. Antifa's never been organized to attack the interests of Rome. It's always been organized to attack the enemies of Rome. Now, they attacked Russia. Well, first they attacked with the 1848 revolt. They attacked the king of Prussia with a P, the king of Germany. And his name was Frederick William IV. Is that right? And so he was a Calvinist, which is it's called the Prussian Union of Churches. So they set up their own union of churches. It was a major Protestant church body which emerged in 1817 from a series of decrees by Frederick William III of Prussia that united both Lutheran and Reformed denominations in Prussia. See, he set up his own federation of churches. That's a big reason right there why Karl Marx, 1848 revolt, tried to take down the king of Germany, the king of Prussia, because they had established their own federation of churches. They were no longer under the Vatican. So they got wiped out, right? Look who got wiped out. It was all people that had become disloyal to the Pope, including Catholic kings like Louis in France, who was beheaded by the Jacobin revolt. Okay, he was against the Jesuits, and he got taken out and killed. Now, during the French Revolution, Robespierre became the leader of the mob. He was like the leader of the mob. He became like a dictator of the mob. He was a strong man dictator of the mob. And he wanted, and so if you ever see anything about Robespierre, he's depicted as ugly, mean, dictator, a bully, a brute, right? That's how he's depicted. And if you notice, he wanted to establish a new church for France called the Cult of the Supreme Being. It was a deist church. So in France, under Robespierre, the French Revolution, the outcome of the French Revolution was that Robespierre was in charge. They had taken out the kings, who were Catholic, but were actually on bad terms with the Jesuits. You see, they were on bad terms with the Jesuits, and they got wiped out in a Jacobin revolt that was organizing in Catholic monasteries. The French Revolution. So they take out the monarchies. And now there's this big thing going on in Western Europe about taking out these monarchies, right? And so then Robespierre becomes the power, the leadership in France. And his idea is to replace the Catholic Church with the cult of the supreme being. Cult of the supreme being. So it's a church, it's a state religion where it's just a deism. It's a pure deism. And it was going to be based on the ideals of the Enlightenment. So it was going to be Enlightenment religion of God, the Dios. And this was the idea. And he got taken out. He got wiped out. And then you had the rise of Napoleon. And that caused a lot of tumult, particularly towards the east. But Frederick held on, and he established a federation of churches among the Germanic races in the Northwest. And this federation of churches was totally independent of Rome. And so Karl Marx and the 1848ers, who were Karl Marx's father was Jewish and a businessman of some kind. I think he was maybe a lawyer, actually, maybe a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. I don't know what he was. But he converted to Lutheranism because they were in Germany, just for the sake of getting along with the Germans, right? Some people call that a crypto, they just convert so that they can become part of the society, so they're not excluded. And so, but Marx went to a Jesuit school, and he and a bunch of others from the Jesuit school incited this revolt in the media, because they were newspaper editor writers and so forth for communist magazines. But see, now think about it. Where's all the money and funding coming from for these communist Marxist groups to overthrow these Christian organizations, right? Like the King of Germany. See, it's all done. It's a secret society now. This is a secret society. And it's a secret because the Romans, the Pope, doesn't want you to know that it's him and his agents behind it. That's why it's a secret. That's the secret of the secret societies, is that they were either hijacked by the Jesuits and the Roman agents, or they were started by them. And in the case of Freemasonry, like over here in the West with George Washington and so forth, they were hijacked. The Duke of Brunswick specifically states that his Masonic order was hijacked by another order that was involved in some highly powerful stuff. But I don't want to go into that yet. So let's talk about this, or maybe I should. Let's find the Duke of Brunswick quote. Duke of Brunswick. Let's see if I can find it real quick for you. Let's see what the Duke of Brunswick says. Duke of Brunswick. Here we go. Duke of Brunswick says, I have been convinced that we as an order, he's talking about his Masonic order, I've been convinced that we as an order have come under the power of some very evil occult order, profoundly versed in science, both occult, secret, and otherwise, meaning, natural sciences, but the secret science, a secret occult science, and others. So he says, I have been convinced that we, as an order, have come under the power of some very evil occult order, profoundly versed in science, both occult and otherwise. Though not infallible, means it can be fought and defeated, their methods being black magic, that is to say, electromagnetic power, hypnotism, and powerful suggestion. We are convinced that the order is being controlled by some sun order, after the nature of the Illuminati, if not by that order itself. This was in 1780. This is it says the Illuminati succeeded in uniting with Freemasonry at the Council of Wilhelmbad in 1780. That's what that says. This is a quote from the Duke of Brunswick, and I can't see exactly what that says because it's really small print and it's in a meme. So anyway, so that's the Duke of Brunswick. So what am I saying here? We are all being deceived into the reasons why we're in a war with Russia. That's what I'm saying. And there's a secret society operating in America through Washington, D.C., and through the European Union that is tied to the Pope. And there's a whole system of corporations that are all allied together through this common bond of Rome and the Vatican. And that's the common bond. And even people who aren't Catholics are part of this common bond. Roman Catholics, they're part of it because Washington, D.C. is part of it, and London is part of it, and the Jewish mafia is part of it, because Zelensky's part of it, and the Kaganovich clan is part of it, and the Rothschilds are part of it. In other words, they're not Catholics. They're Jewish, or you have Protestants in the West, and you got the Zionists and the Pete Hegseth and the different things, right? And you've got the Antifa and the LGBT and the BLM. You've got all those different groups, but they're all bound together in the West, which the center of that concept is Rome. And so all those corporations that are all working together have a common bond, and it's all bringing them back into Rome. And it's all being done in coordination with people operating with this concept of Rome, like the CIA, which is operating out of Georgetown University. And Georgetown University isn't just doing this out of philosophical bonds; it's directly connected to Rome. That's Washington D.C., the District of Columbia, with land that was donated or previously owned and given to the American colonies to build their new capital by the Pope and by the Catholic Church. So it's not just a tenuous or thin type of connection. It's like an ironclad connection. It's one that you can't escape. And this is why you're really being deceived. Now Catholics are often some really great folks, but they're deceived. That's the thing. They're deceived. If they think they're fighting the communists, they think they're fighting Karl Marx. They're not. So they're just as deceived as the people around them. They're just as deceived about what they're doing and why they're doing it. They're not fighting the communists. Maybe they think they are, but that's just a little setup of left versus right in America, run by that's all under the Roman system. That's the commercial capitalist communist model, to keep everyone fighting each other but united in battle, while they really are fighting the East militarily around the world. That's why we left our border open while we went and fought Ukraine. That's why we let the mafia ship in all the drugs, and we let the unions run LGBT stuff for the kindergartners, and have homosexual literal prostitutes, male prostitutes, dress up in demon costumes. I'm not joking about that they dress in demon costumes at the Michelle Obama Library in Long Beach, California, and read porno books to kids that are written by pedophiles. That actually happens in America, and it's been happening for that started under Obama. How long ago was that? That was like a decade ago, 10 years ago. I mean, that's how long that this has been going on. It's just as far as that. But the other stuff's been going on forever. The other stuff's been going on. The conflict started in 1054 between the East Roman split. And so when people say we're fighting Russia because they invaded Ukraine and we're allied with Ukraine and we're selling weapons to Ukraine, this is why I like Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I went out of my way to promote Donald Trump and help Donald Trump get elected wherever I could, by helping him and promoting him on the internet, this and that. But ultimately, he has not escaped this thing, which is the United States of America, the U.S. government, Washington, D.C., is an agency of Rome. And he's got all the flags at half-staff for the Pope. And there's the country has been flooded with Latin American Catholics and Catholics from Asia, and lots of Catholics from Europe. And so if that's what this is, that's not really for me. Not really for me. It's quite sad, actually. It's kind of a waste. It's a waste of America, and it's a waste of our population. Total waste. Doing anything for Rome is a complete waste of European people. You're wasting your life. You're wasting your life. Just look at that. So look, the reason why America was great was because the white people that came here and replicated all across this land and built all these big, beautiful cities were strong, healthy, intelligent, smart, great. Like, it was such a great culture. And that was all taken out because that's not Catholicism. Catholicism is, these are sad people and they have problems and you have to have a give them a bottle in the mouth. See, that's Catholicism. I was just driving down the freeway on the way to work this morning, and you got to understand how ugly the society is. Okay. There's this big, gigantic billboard, and it's from this thing called Easter Seals. Is this a Catholic organization? Sounds like it. It's a nonprofit. What is this shit? It's disability and community services. Okay, well that's nice. Is Easter Seals Catholic? It says it's not affiliated with any religion, probably so it can get money from different types of groups. But it seems, I think it is, because the whole idea, like, they've got this big billboard promoting people with disabilities. So I have to see that when I'm driving. Now, I would like, if someone says, hey, if someone just privately said, hey, would you like to help people with disabilities? That'd be great. But don't promote it. And they've got this meme of how celebrate it and have pride in it. And it's like, dude, no. It's not, help them, yes. But the thing is, as a culture, see, what I want to see when I'm driving down the road or when I'm walking through a town, I want to see like an image of man or woman that shows them beautiful and strong and healthy and wise and all the qualities that are like God. You see? And that's not what the Catholic Church promotes. It says, man is a helpless little animal. Babies. That's how it is. That's how this whole culture is. And, most of the people at this point are blaming the Jews. I'm blaming the Catholic Church for this. I'm starting to just blame the Catholic Church because this is their ideology of this whole helpless, vulnerable, the black people and the brown people and the Asian people are all helpless. Oh, that's the religion of the Catholic Church. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it. And, I'm not against having harmonious relationships with other races. But see, the thing is, if white people left to their own devices without the Pope and all this garbage toilet culture that emanates out of Rome, we would have beautiful cities and beautiful people. And the whole idea behind like white people of like, particularly because it's Greek, it comes out of the Athenian Greek type of culture, is the beauty of man and woman and the physique of a male and a woman, like it's all beautiful and it's all strong and it's all healthy. Well, that's how I live, man. That's how I live. And I don't need to see images of perverts and sad people. And it's almost like it's like a cult of the dead. When I see these people that are connected to that church, it's like a cult of the dead, the cult of the living dead. They're sad and they're depressed and they're this and that. Well, you know what? That's not the religion of the white race, bro. We're not sad and depressed. No, we want to be happy and we want to be industrious and we want to have beautiful things. We want to make beautiful things. And so if Rome is going to be ruling over America, then America is just going to continue to sink down the toilet. So everything that you think of, which is considered progressive, that's the Catholic Church. And communism is an agency of the Catholic Church, Not communism, but Marxism, because the East became what they call the Soviet Union. It's a complicated history because they were overthrown by the West. See, the West is always the Roman Catholic system, which includes London and France and America and Canada and Australia, because we're all under the Pope, whether we know it or not, or whether we like it or not, because it's all controlled. We're all controlled by the CIA and the FBI and the different intelligence services through the federal government that's controlled by the Roman system. Okay, that's why all the judges at the Supreme Court are Catholics or Jews who have been indoctrinated by the Catholic Church. And notice how there's women and there's so it's race mixed but it's Catholic because race mixing is Catholicism. That's the thing they have to force on the West. And so what I'm saying is this isn't something white people in general should support. It's bad for the white race because it's sick. It's a sick ideology. It's a sick ideology of disease and basically the living dead, worshiping delusions, worshiping things like shrouds. Oh, we found a shroud. Okay, that's called a confidence game. It's a religion of confidence games. Confidence. It's a confidence game. Have confidence in the Pope. Have confidence in the story. Have confidence in the shroud. Have confidence in this object or that idea or this story that I made up. So you have to have confidence in the thing instead of just believing in the truth, which is called the Logos or Christ or God or whatever. Like just believing in God. Why do you need a confidence game to convince you that you're right? To convince you that this person is telling the truth. See, that's a confidence game. You don't need that. And that's what the Roman system is. It's a confidence game, and the people are worshiping a delusion through this confidence game, and it all goes back to submission to the Pope. And it's a horrible, horrible form of society. If you want to live in a sick, dying, perverted, criminal infested society of systematic child abuse, then submit to the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church, because that's what you have, and that's what you've always had this whole time, and that's all you're going to have in the future. You're never going to have anything else but that. That's why American cities are in ruins, and they will remain in ruins as long as we're under the Pope through the District of Columbia. Now, how far back to this? So it goes back to I'm saying it goes back to 1054. It actually goes back before that because it goes back to the Roman Greco War. Because before you had the split between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church, you had the battle between Rome and Macedonia, and this is when you get the story of the in Maccabees of the Jews fighting the Greeks and allying with the Romans against the Greeks. And so if you notice, because it's like, where does this alliance between the Jewish mafia and the Vatican come from? It started way back in around when was the Roman Greco War? Roman Greco War time. Started way back in 217 to 205, around 200 BC to 150 BC. You could say 200 BC to 150 BC-ish was the time of the two powers actually fought for three wars. Okay. So it was the Roman Greek wars. And at some point, the Romans allied with a faction of Jews to fight the Greeks, because the Greeks were ruling Judea, and the Greeks had a dynasty over Judea. I believe it was called the Hasmonean. Is that correct? Maybe correct. I don't know. They were over Judea, and then the Romans started working with a faction within Judea to fight with the Greeks. And this is where you get the story of Hanukkah, which is obviously a Roman story written by the Romans. The Judeans never had a record of this, but the Romans did. But now the Jews celebrate Hanukkah, even though there's no record of that in their own writings. Only in the Catholic Bible was there a record of that. The Judeans never kept any records of that. But so now that there's the story of the Hanukkah and the 9 candles, or what, the 9 nights of candle burning. Anyway, so if you ever wonder, like, why is there a 9 candle menorah? I thought it was supposed to be 7, because 7 is a natural. The 7 candle menorah, that's based on the heavens, right? You've got the 7 lights. Before as the sun sets and before it gets really dark and you can see all the stars in the sky, before that happens, if you'll notice it, either at dawn or dusk, that time of dawn or dusk, you can see certain planets appear in the sky before you see all of the stars. And those different bodies of light would be, of course, the sun, which you can see during the day, and the moon. But then there's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. So Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Sun, and the Moon is 7. That's 7. And that's why you have a 7-candle menorah, because it's based on the natural order in the stars in the heavens. There's no 9-candle menorah. That comes from a Roman story called the Maccabees. And now the Jews celebrate Hanukkah on Christmas. They celebrate Hanukkah because they got to do something like whatever word. It's just a made-up holiday that the Romans made up and that the Jews follow. And those Jews are working with the Romans, and that's called the Jewish Mafia. And they are doing all kinds of things in coordination with the Romans. And so that's why I call it a syndicate. That's why I call it a syndicate. Because a syndicate is a synthesis, like it's different parts that work together as a whole, like different groups that, like a coalition is a syndicate. A syndicate is a coalition of groups. And the primary group, the center of that group is the Vatican. And then it's got different groups that it works with in coordination with, like the CIA, like the Jewish Mafia, like the Islamic terror networks, like the Muslim Brotherhood, like Mossad, like MI6, like all kinds of organizations around the world. And so, but that all started with the Greco-Roman Wars of 200 to 150 BC. And it didn't end there, because then it continued on between the split in between the Catholic and the Orthodox Church. And then when the Roman system started to fail in the West, and they abolished the kings through the Jesuit order, they backed this new thing called communism. Because you got to understand, the Enlightenment age, you just look at what happened in France. It was an Enlightenment age revolt, but it had two factions. It had the deist faction and it had the atheist faction. And the Romans don't want you to do the deist faction, because then you're going to establish another church. So the atheist faction was not a threat, because they weren't going to establish a church. They were just going to carry out the agenda of the Pope under the guise of Marxism without establishing a church. Well, that's what the Roman church wants. They don't want you to establish a church. They want you to carry out their agenda, and you can call it whatever you want. You don't have to believe in God. You just have to do what they say. And so that's called Marxism, is carrying out the agenda of Rome while being an atheist or being a Jewish communist. And now you're doing the bidding of Rome, and you think you're a Jewish communist when really you're an agent of the Vatican. And you think you're the president of the Republican Party in the United States when really you're an agent of the Vatican, because you're still arming Ukraine and you're still part of this thing that's all tied to Rome called the European Union. And you haven't broken away. You haven't broken away. And China hasn't broken away either. It's all in a big commercial system that was set up by all these banking cartels in the 50s. They put all this together, and we're locked into it. We're locked into it. And you say you want out of it, but you're not really willing to pay the economic price that it's going to take on the front end to get out of it. In the long run, there's nothing that could ever stop the white race from being successful. But we're like very, whatever. They've created a system of interdependency, which is basically a giant prison system that's locked you in, because the Chinese have nukes now. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about it? You want to break up the whole system and leave them with those nukes? And what if they, it's like there's just all these reasons why we're now stuck with this thing. So anyway, here's this conflict that's been going on for thousands of years, starting with the Roman Greco War and their alliance with the Jewish Mafia. Now, the Greeks were allied with Jews too. The Hasmonean dynasty, I believe that's what it was called. No, what was the name of the Greek? Let me give you the name of the Greek dude. Greek king of Judah. What was his name? The king of Judah was The Greek leaders of Judah. Kingdom of Judah. What was that guy's name? The Hasmonean dynasty, right? What was that? He took the name of a Hasmonean dynasty. What is this? A Jewish ruling dynasty that reigned in Judea and surrounding regions during the Hellenistic period, roughly 140 to 37 BC. Okay, so that was the Hellenistic period. That was after. Okay, so they continued on. They emerged from the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Okay, so that was that. So they emerged after so they emerged from the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire, which is the Greek Empire, and eventually established an independent kingdom before becoming a client state of the Roman Empire. Get it? So they were used by the Romans to break away from the Greeks and then establish their own independent kingdom, but was then taken back into the Romans. So what was previous to the Hasmonean dynasty? The Seleucid Empire. Seleucid dynasty. Okay. Let's see. What was the name of that guy? Seleucid leader of Judea. What was that guy's name? King Antiochus. Under Seleucid King Antiochus Epiphanes, internal strife and external, I don't know. What does we got here? Which Seleucid king persecuted the Jews? Oh, he was the one that fought with the Jewish Maccabees, right? But there was something before that. What was the name of the guy? This is important that I find this information for you. Seleucid leader of Judea. Leader of Judea, 200 BC. Jewish leader of Judea in 200 BC. What was his name? This is before the Romans. Around 200 BC, Judea was primarily under the control of Seleucid kings who had taken over from the Lagids. I don't know what that is. In Egypt. Oh, okay. They were an Egyptian something or another. There wasn't a single universally recognized Jewish leader at the time. No, there was a name of somebody before the Maccabean revolts. This is being hidden from me right now by Google. And what was his name? I can find it. You know why I can find it? Because he had the same name of a territory. What was the capital of Seleucid Empire? What was it called? Orontes. Major cities of Seleucid Empire. Oh, shoot. I know they're somewhere. It's up near the Caspian somewhere. Crud. I don't know what it's called. Here we go. What is this one? Nope, I don't see it. There was a city up there. Okay. Anyway, can't get you that information right now. It's going to take me a while to look it up again. But here we are. Donald Trump is car bombing Russians. And I'm not. This is stupid, dude. This is for the Pope. Donald Trump has all the flags in America at half staff for the Pope. Why? We're not the Catholic Church, bro. We're supposed to be separate from that. We're supposed to be independent from that. Do you think that the Russians let's see. Let me give you an example. What are the Russians? What are the Russians doing to honor Pope Francis? Probably nothing. I'd be surprised if they're doing anything. They might be. What are the Russians doing to honor Pope Francis? Deadly Russian airstrikes rock Ukraine. I don't want them to hit Ukraine. I like Ukrainians. But I'm just saying, Ukraine, dude, don't work for the Pope or their Jewish mafia agents. That's all I'm saying. Yes, you should have what you want. And I think you're going to need to work with Putin on that. I think we need to just not have a war over this. It's not worth it. Because you could say, well, we want this and we want that. You're not going to get it, man. Listen, I live in America, okay? And we've lost our cities. We don't have cities in America. They're all destroyed. And so if the reason why you guys in Ukraine are so strong and powerful and able to fight is because you're not under the West. That's why you're still in good condition, right? The West is like a giant cemetery. So like the reason why you have all this strength, like we're going to go and fight, we're going to fight the Russians, and we're never going to stop, right? The reason you have that drive is because you're not in the West. That's why you have that drive, man. That's why you have that drive. If you were in the West, you'd be flooded. Okay, if you're in the West, where you claim you want to be, you're going to be under LGBT, BLM. Kiev's going to be a migrant hub and center of global LGBT and stuff with kids, and it's just going to be there's nothing good is going to come out of this. So it's not that I don't want you to have what you want. What I'm saying is you're allying with people that are subversives. Okay, the U.S. is controlled by the Roman Catholic Church is a subversive pedophile organization, and so all these agencies like the CIA and all these groups associated with them, they're all in on that because that's who they work for. And that's the thing that I don't want you to end up like. See, I want Ukraine to continue as Ukraine. I don't want the Muslims coming in there from the Caucasus and fighting with you. I don't want any other foreign people coming in fighting with. I want you to get along with your Russian neighbors and you develop your Ukrainian culture and your language and everything just like you want to. And having this war on behalf of Europe and Rome and the District of Columbia and a bunch of weird perverts in America and Europe and London, and Muslims in Europe and America and London, and Jewish mafia in Europe, America and London is not going to do it. You're not going to get anything out of that. And so that's what I want you to not get stuck with. So I'll end off with that.